Royal tradition versus love. The battle. Princess Leonor could eventually face what happens when the future Queen of Spain falls in love with someone the royal world never expected. Would she be free to follow her heart? Or would the crown demand something more? For centuries, royal marriages were rarely just about love. They were about alliances, dynasties, power, religion, property, and political influence. A prince or princess could be expected to marry someone who strengthened the monarchy rather than someone who simply made them happy. But Princess Leonor was born into a completely different era. She is growing up in a Spain where royal marriage is no longer governed by the old rules of arranged dynastic alliances. And yet, the responsibilities of being heir to the throne have not disappeared. So what happens if Leonor eventually falls deeply in love with someone who doesn't fit traditional expectations? Someone without a royal title, someone from an ordinary family, someone whose background attracts controversy, or simply someone the Spanish public doesn't immediately embrace? Would tradition win? Would love win? Or could Leonor create a new definition of what it means to marry as a future Queen of Spain? That is the fascinating battle waiting somewhere in her future. And it may reveal just how modern or traditional the Spanish monarchy really is. Chapter 1. The old royal rule. For much of European history, royal marriage was anything but ordinary. A princess could not simply fall in love and decide to marry. Her marriage could affect an entire dynasty. Kings and queens looked at family connections, political alliances, territories, religion, international relationships. A royal wedding could be a diplomatic strategy. Two royal families could become connected. Two countries could strengthen their relationship. And sometimes, a marriage could help prevent conflict. Love was often secondary. Duty came first. But the world changed. Democracy expanded. Constitutional monarchies evolved. And royal families gradually became more connected to ordinary society. The question changed from which royal family should she marry to who can share this extraordinary life with her. And that change is especially important for Leonor. Chapter 2. Leonor was born into a different monarchy. Princess Leonor is not growing up in the world of European dynastic marriages. She is growing up in a constitutional monarchy. That means the Spanish crown operates within a legal and constitutional framework. The monarch is not an absolute ruler. The institution exists alongside democratic government and parliament. And Leonor's future marriage will therefore have to be understood within that modern framework. But modern does not mean consequence-free. Because Leonor isn't simply a private citizen. She is the heir to the crown. That means her personal choices can sometimes have institutional consequences. And marriage is perhaps the clearest example. Chapter 3. The constitutional question. Here is where the story becomes more complicated. Spain's constitution contains specific provisions concerning the succession to the crown and the marriage of members of the royal family. The constitution provides that people in the line of succession who marry despite an express prohibition from the king and the Cortes Generales can be excluded from succession. That is an important rule. But it is also important not to exaggerate what it means. It does not mean the king can simply choose Leonor's husband. It does not mean every romantic relationship requires royal approval. And it does not mean Spain is operating under the marriage rules of a medieval court. Instead, it establishes a constitutional consequence concerning succession in a very specific circumstance. That distinction matters, because the dramatic version of the story is Leonor can't marry whoever she wants. The reality is more nuanced. Her private relationships and a future marriage would exist within a constitutional framework. Chapter 4. The love question. Now imagine Leonor meets someone, not a prince, not a king, not a member of an old European dynasty, just someone she genuinely loves. They understand each other, they trust each other, they make each other happy. At first, perhaps nobody knows. It's private, normal, personal, but eventually, the relationship becomes serious. And then comes the question, what happens when the future queen's private choice becomes a public matter? Suddenly, people may ask, who is this person? Where are they from? What do they do? What is their family background? Can they handle royal life? Would they represent Spain well? And perhaps most importantly, would the Spanish public accept them? That is where love could collide with royal expectations. Chapter 5. The Letizia example changed everything. To understand how much royal marriage has changed, look at Leonor's own parents. King Felipe VI married Letizia Ortiz Roca Solano. Before joining the royal family, Letizia was a journalist. She was not born a princess. She did not come from another reigning European dynasty. Yet she became Queen of Spain. That fact is extremely significant. It demonstrates how far modern royal marriage has moved away from the old system. Felipe did not need to marry another European princess to fulfill his role. Instead, his marriage was based on a personal relationship, and Letizia became an important part of the modern Spanish monarchy. For Leonor, her mother's story provides a powerful example. Tradition can evolve. Chapter 6. But Leonor's position is different. There is an important difference between Felipe's position when he married and Leonor's position today. Leonor is the current heir. Her future spouse would eventually become the husband of the reigning queen. That means the public interest could be enormous. Her partner would potentially be expected to participate in royal life, official ceremonies, state occasions, diplomatic events. charitable activities, international visits, and countless public appearances. So the person Leonor eventually chooses may need to understand something very difficult. They wouldn't simply be marrying a woman. They would be joining an institution. That can change everything. Chapter 7 The pressure on the person she loves. Imagine being the person who falls in love with Princess Leonor. At first, perhaps your relationship is completely private. Then one photograph appears. Suddenly, people want to know everything. Your family, your childhood, your education, your career, your friends, your social media accounts, your opinions, even your past mistakes. That is an enormous burden. And it could become even more intense because Leonor isn't just another member of the royal family. She is the future monarch. Her partner would likely attract extraordinary scrutiny. That is why choosing a future spouse could involve more than romance. It could require emotional resilience, patience, discretion, and an ability to live under public attention. Chapter 8 Would Spain accept a commoner? This is one of the biggest questions, and the answer may be more complicated than people expect. Spain has already seen a commoner become queen. Queen Letizia's background demonstrated that the Spanish monarchy could adapt to a changing society. So marrying someone without a royal title would not automatically be unprecedented. But public reaction is unpredictable. Some people might celebrate the romance. They could see it as modern and relatable. Others might prefer a partner with experience in royal or diplomatic life. Some might argue that Leonor should marry for love. Others might argue that her position requires her to consider the crown. And social media would amplify every side of the argument. Chapter 9 The myth of the perfect royal partner. There is no such thing as a perfect royal spouse. A person can have an impressive family background and still struggle with public life. Someone from an ordinary family could potentially adapt remarkably well. The real challenge isn't simply where someone comes from. It's whether they can handle the role. Can they remain calm under pressure? Can they respect Leonor's responsibilities? Can they maintain privacy? Can they avoid turning every disagreement into a public crisis? Can they support the monarch without competing with her? These qualities could matter far more than a surname. And that is one reason the modern royal family looks so different from royal courts of the past. Chapter 10 What would King Felipe and Queen Letizia think? If Leonor eventually faces a difficult romantic decision, her parents' perspective could be extremely important. King Felipe understands the constitutional responsibilities of the crown. Queen Letizia understands what it means to enter royal life from outside the traditional aristocracy. Their experiences are very different, and together, they could provide Leonor with something valuable: perspective. They could help her understand the consequences of a decision without necessarily making that decision for her, because Leonor will eventually have to develop her own judgment. A future monarch cannot spend her entire life asking someone else what to do. At some point, she has to decide. Chapter 11 Tradition doesn't always mean saying no. There is another misconception worth examining. Tradition isn't always about preventing change. Sometimes tradition is about continuity. The Spanish monarchy has survived partly by adapting to changing circumstances. The institution has changed. Royal marriages have changed. Public expectations have changed. The way royals communicate has changed. And the role of the monarchy itself has changed. So Leonor may eventually discover that the real challenge isn't choosing between tradition and love. It may be finding a way to combine them. She could preserve the traditions that matter while creating a modern personal life. And perhaps that is what the next generation of European royals will increasingly have to do. Chapter 12 What if the public disapproves? Now imagine the relationship becomes public, and the reaction is mixed. Some people love the couple. Others criticize the partner. Commentators debate whether they are suitable. Social media becomes divided. Headlines appear every day. What does Leonor do? This could be one of her greatest tests. Because a future monarch cannot simply react emotionally to every public criticism. She would need judgment. She would need patience. And she would have to understand that public approval can change. A relationship that is unpopular today might become accepted tomorrow. Royal history is full of examples of public opinion changing over time. Chapter 13 Love can also strengthen a monarchy. There is another side to this story. A royal marriage based on genuine affection can sometimes make a monarchy feel more human. People may connect with the couple. They may see a relationship that feels authentic. They may see a future queen not as a distant institution, but as a person. This is particularly important in modern constitutional monarchies. Public support cannot simply be assumed. The institution has to maintain relevance. A relatable royal family can help create that connection. So if Leonor eventually chooses a partner for love, the choice could potentially become a strength rather than a weakness. Chapter 14 The biggest danger may be the media. Perhaps the greatest threat to any future royal romance won't be tradition. It could be the media environment. Today, there are endless platforms: television, newspapers, websites, social media, video platforms, fan accounts, comment sections. A single photograph can create a story that spreads internationally. And once a narrative begins, it can be incredibly difficult to control. For Leonor, this means privacy may become one of her greatest protections. The less people know, the less they can distort. but maintaining privacy while being a future queen is extraordinarily difficult. Chapter 15 The battle Leonor could eventually face. So what would happen if Leonor's heart and royal expectations eventually pointed in different directions? There may not be a simple answer. She would have to consider the person she loves, the constitutional framework, her responsibilities as heir, her future responsibilities as monarch, her family, and perhaps the wider institution. But there is something important to remember. Leonor has not publicly announced a romantic dilemma that needs to be solved. There is no confirmed royal battle taking place right now. This is a question about the future, a possibility, and that is what makes it so fascinating, because Leonor's generation may be the generation that finally proves how compatible monarchy and personal freedom can be. Final love or duty? One day, Princess Leonor may stand at the center of Spain's monarchy. She will have responsibilities that few people can fully understand. She will represent the country, carry constitutional duties, meet world leaders, lead national ceremonies, and eventually, perhaps, build a family of her own. If she falls in love, the world will probably want to know. If that relationship becomes serious, the questions will become even louder. Is the person suitable? Does Spain approve? What does the crown think? What does tradition require? And what does Leonor herself want? Those questions may eventually collide. But perhaps the most interesting part of the story is that Leonor's parents have already shown that royal tradition can change. King Felipe married a woman who was not born into royalty. Queen Letizia became queen without coming from a traditional royal dynasty. Their marriage helped create the modern royal family that Leonor is now inheriting. So perhaps Leonor's future will not be a simple battle between love and duty. Perhaps it will be an opportunity to redefine what duty actually means. Because duty does not necessarily mean sacrificing every personal desire. It can mean making responsible choices, understanding consequences, protecting the institution, and still remaining human. Maybe the future Queen of Spain won't have to choose between her heart and her crown. Maybe her greatest challenge will be learning how to carry both. And if that day eventually comes, the world will be watching, not just to discover who Princess Leonor loves, but to discover what kind of queen she chooses to become. Music rises. What do you think? If Princess Leonor eventually falls in love with someone outside the traditional royal world, should she be completely free to choose her partner, or should her position as future queen influence that decision? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to follow Princess Leonor's journey from heir to future monarch, subscribe, because the biggest decisions of her royal life may still be waiting for her.